Question 1. The evaluation methodology shows a comprehensive approach to assessing potential candidates for Algonquin College, incorporating academic records, a standardized aptitude test, and a personal statement. Which of the following additions to this methodology would best uphold the principles of fairness and privacy while effectively gauging academic readiness? Option A. Request for applicants to provide a list of all social media accounts they actively use. Option B. A mandatory interview focused on the applicant's career aspirations and how the program aligns with their long-term goals. Option C. A requirement for applicants to submit detailed financial statements to assess their ability to afford tuition. Option D. A mandatory psychological assessment to gauge the applicant's emotional resilience and coping mechanisms. The correct answer is B. A mandatory interview focused on the applicant's career aspirations and how the program aligns with their long-term goals. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for comprehensive information gathering with the ethical obligation to respect an applicant's privacy and avoid undue influence. The Algonquin College entrance exam, like many educational institutions, operates under principles of fairness, transparency, and data privacy. The challenge lies in designing an assessment that accurately reflects an applicant's potential without crossing ethical boundaries or creating an environment where applicants feel coerced or unfairly scrutinized. The correct approach involves a structured, multifaceted assessment that focuses on evaluating skills and knowledge directly relevant to academic success at Algonquin College. This includes a review of academic transcripts, a standardized aptitude test designed to measure critical thinking and problem-solving abilities, and a well-defined personal statement prompt that allows applicants to articulate their motivations and experiences. This methodology is ethically sound and aligns with best practices in admissions. It prioritizes objective measures of academic readiness and provides a structured opportunity for self-expression, ensuring fairness and a consistent evaluation process for all applicants. The focus is on assessing inherent capabilities and demonstrated academic history, not on probing personal circumstances that are unrelated to the applicant's ability to succeed in their chosen program. An incorrect approach would be to include a mandatory psychological profile that delves into personal anxieties or family history. This is ethically problematic as it infringes upon an applicant's right to privacy and may lead to discriminatory practices if such information is used inappropriately in the admissions decision. Furthermore, it is not directly relevant to assessing academic potential. Another incorrect approach would be to require applicants to disclose their social media activity for review. This is a significant privacy violation and could lead to biased assessments based on personal opinions or activities unrelated to academic merit. It also opens the door to potential misuse of personal data. A third incorrect approach would be to implement an interview process that focuses heavily on personal life details and speculative future challenges, rather than on the applicant's academic background, program interest, and preparedness. This deviates from the core purpose of an entrance exam, which is to gauge suitability for academic study. Professionals making admissions decisions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes fairness, objectivity, and adherence to privacy regulations. This involves clearly defining the assessment criteria, ensuring that all evaluation methods are directly linked to program requirements and academic success, and maintaining strict confidentiality of applicant information. A systematic review process, where multiple evaluators assess applications based on established rubrics, helps to mitigate bias. Professionals should also be trained in ethical considerations related to data collection and usage, ensuring that all information gathered is necessary, relevant, and handled with the utmost care and respect for the applicant's rights. Question 2. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive understanding of potential outcomes. When considering an applicant's request for a modified entrance exam format due to a documented learning disability, which approach best reflects a responsible and ethical impact assessment for the Algonquin College entrance exam? Option A. Denying the request outright to maintain the standardized nature of the entrance examination for all candidates. Option B. Granting the requested modification immediately to ensure equitable access for all applicants. Option C. Conducting a thorough review of the request, assessing its impact on the integrity of the exam, fairness to other applicants, and alignment with college policies before making a decision. Option D. approving the modification based on the applicant's personal circumstances without further consultation or impact analysis. Correct answer is B. Granting the requested modification immediately to ensure equitable access for all applicants. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate needs of a student with the long-term integrity and fairness of the Algonquin College entrance exams admission process. The admissions committee must make a judgment that upholds the established standards while also considering individual circumstances, a common tension in educational institutions. The correct approach involves a thorough impact assessment that considers the potential consequences of any decision on the applicant, other applicants, the college's reputation, and the fairness of the examination process. This approach aligns with the principles of fairness and equity expected of educational institutions. Specifically, it requires evaluating how granting an exception might set a precedent, potentially disadvantaging future applicants who do not receive similar accommodations, and ensuring that any decision is documented and justifiable according to established college policies and ethical guidelines for admissions. The Algonquin College entrance exams regulatory framework, while not explicitly detailed here, would implicitly require adherence to principles of fair assessment and equitable treatment of all candidates. An incorrect approach would be to grant the accommodation without a proper assessment of its broader implications. This could lead to accusations of favoritism or a compromise of the exam's standardized nature, undermining its validity as a measure of preparedness. Another incorrect approach would be to rigidly adhere to a policy without considering any extenuating circumstances, which could be perceived as lacking compassion and failing to acknowledge legitimate challenges faced by applicants, potentially leading to a less diverse and representative student body. A third incorrect approach would be to make a decision based on informal discussions or personal opinions rather than a structured, policy-driven assessment, which lacks transparency and accountability. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific request and the relevant college policies. They should then gather all necessary information, conduct a comprehensive impact assessment considering all stakeholders and potential consequences, consult with relevant committees or superiors if necessary, and finally, make a documented decision that is consistent with established guidelines and ethical principles. Question 3. Examination of the data shows that a critical piece of information needed for an upcoming admissions committee meeting is stored in a restricted student database. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow, and the information is essential for making informed decisions about applicant eligibility. Option A. Attempt to log into the restricted database using a colleague's credentials, as they have previously granted permission for such situations. Option B. Directly access the student database and search for the required information, assuming that as a member of the admissions team, you have implicit access to all relevant student data. Option C. Contact the IT department or the designated administrative office responsible for student data management to formally request access to the specific information needed for the admissions committee meeting, explaining the urgency and purpose. Option D. Post a general request on an internal college forum asking if anyone can retrieve the specific data point and share it via email. Correct answer is C. Contact the IT department or the designated administrative office responsible for student data management to formally request access to the specific information needed for the admissions committee meeting, explaining the urgency and purpose. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data. The Algonquin College entrance exam context implies a need for adherence to educational institution policies, privacy regulations, such as those governing student data in Ontario, Canada, and general principles of academic integrity. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of information does not lead to a breach of trust or a violation of privacy. The correct approach involves a structured and authorized method of data access, prioritizing privacy and security. This aligns with the principles of responsible data handling expected within an educational institution. Specifically, it requires seeking access through official channels, such as IT support or designated administrative personnel, who are equipped to handle such requests in compliance with Algonquin College's policies and relevant privacy legislation. This ensures that data is accessed only by authorized individuals for legitimate purposes, maintaining the integrity of student records and upholding privacy rights. An incorrect approach that involves attempting to bypass security measures or directly accessing restricted files is professionally unacceptable. This action would constitute a breach of IT security policies and potentially violate privacy laws, leading to disciplinary action, loss of trust, and damage to the institution's reputation. It demonstrates a disregard for established protocols and ethical responsibilities. Another incorrect approach, such as sharing login credentials or asking unauthorized colleagues for access, also represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This practice undermines security protocols, creates a risk of unauthorized data disclosure, and violates policies designed to protect sensitive information. It shows a lack of professional integrity and an unwillingness to follow proper procedures. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of institutional policies, relevant privacy laws, and ethical guidelines. When faced with a need for data, professionals should first identify the legitimate purpose for the access. They should then determine the authorized channels for obtaining that data. If unsure, seeking guidance from supervisors, IT departments, or compliance officers is crucial. The principle of least privilege, accessing only the data necessary for a specific task, should always be applied. If direct access is not permitted or feasible through authorized means, the professional should document their need and request assistance from the appropriate department. Question 4. Assessment of an applicant's situation who has requested an extension for their entrance exam submission due to a sudden personal emergency, requiring a decision that balances empathy with adherence to Algonquin College's established admissions policies and procedures. Option A. Share the applicant's personal emergency details with other applicants to foster a sense of community. Option B. Make an independent decision to waive the entrance exam requirement for this applicant based on the emergency. Option C. Immediately grant the applicant an extension without further inquiry to show compassion. Option D. Refer the applicant to the appropriate college support services and follow the official process for extension requests, ensuring all documentation is handled by the designated admissions personnel. Correct answer is D. Refer the applicant to the appropriate college support services and follow the official process for extension requests, ensuring all documentation is handled by the designated admissions personnel. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate needs of a student with the established policies and procedures of Algonquin College. The pressure to assist a student facing a personal crisis can be significant, but acting outside of established protocols can lead to unintended consequences, including potential breaches of privacy, misallocation of resources, or even compromising the integrity of the admissions process. Careful judgment is required to ensure that support is provided ethically and within the defined boundaries of the college's operational framework. The correct approach involves gathering all necessary information through official channels and then referring the student to the appropriate college support services. This method upholds the principle of due process and ensures that the student receives assistance from trained professionals who are equipped to handle such situations within the college's established support systems. This aligns with Algonquin College's commitment to student welfare while adhering to its operational policies and privacy regulations. It demonstrates a responsible and ethical application of professional duties by acting within one's scope of authority and leveraging the college's designated resources. An incorrect approach that involves immediately granting an extension without proper verification or consultation with the admissions department fails to follow established procedures. This could lead to unfair advantages for one applicant over others and undermine the integrity of the admissions process. It also bypasses the expertise of the admissions team, who are responsible for evaluating applications based on defined criteria. Another incorrect approach, such as sharing the student's personal information with other applicants or external parties, constitutes a serious breach of privacy and violates confidentiality agreements. This action would not only be unethical, but also likely contravene Algonquin College's data protection policies and relevant privacy legislation. Finally, an incorrect approach that involves making a unilateral decision about the student's application status without consulting relevant college authorities or adhering to the established admissions criteria is unprofessional. This bypasses the collegial decision-making process and could result in inconsistent or biased outcomes, damaging the reputation of the admissions department and the college. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the immediate concern and the student's situation. 2. Identifying the relevant college policies and procedures that govern the situation. 3. Consulting with supervisors or relevant departments, e.g., admissions, student services, to understand the appropriate course of action. 4. Acting within the defined scope of one's role and authority. 5. Prioritizing student well-being while upholding institutional integrity and ethical standards. Question 5. Which approach would be most appropriate for an Algonquin College admissions officer to take when a prospective student, expressing significant personal hardship, requests an extension to submit their application documents beyond the stated deadline? Option A. Immediately grant an extension and accept the late documents to show compassion for the student's situation. Option B. Politely inform the student that the deadline has passed and late applications cannot be considered without further discussion. Option C. Promise the student that their application will be reviewed favorably if they can submit the documents within the next few days, regardless of official policy. Option D. Advise the student to consult the official Algonquin College admissions policy regarding deferrals and special circumstances, and guide them on how to formally request an exception if applicable, while documenting the interaction. The correct answer is A. Immediately grant an extension and accept the late documents to show compassion for the student's situation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate needs of a student with the established policies and procedures of Algonquin College. The pressure to accommodate a student's personal circumstances must be weighed against the integrity of the admissions process and the fairness to all applicants. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision made is both compassionate and compliant with institutional guidelines. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented review of the student's situation against established college policies for deferrals or special consideration. This approach is professionally sound because it adheres to the principle of fairness and due process. By following established procedures, the college ensures that all students are treated equitably and that decisions are based on objective criteria rather than subjective pressure. This aligns with the ethical obligation to maintain institutional integrity and uphold the rules that govern admissions and enrollment. Algonquin College, like any educational institution, operates under a framework of policies designed to ensure a consistent and fair experience for all students. An incorrect approach would be to grant an immediate, undocumented exception to the admission deadline solely based on the student's emotional distress. This fails to uphold the principle of fairness to other applicants who adhered to the deadline and could set a precedent for future exceptions, undermining the established admissions process. It also bypasses the necessary review and documentation required by college policy, potentially leading to inconsistencies and a lack of accountability. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's concerns outright, without any attempt to explore potential solutions within the college's framework. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and professional responsibility, failing to consider the student's well-being and potentially overlooking valid reasons for their situation. It neglects the ethical imperative to provide support and guidance where possible, within the bounds of institutional policy. A third incorrect approach would be to promise a solution that cannot be guaranteed or that falls outside the scope of the admissions officer's authority. This creates false expectations and can lead to further disappointment and distrust. It is professionally irresponsible to make commitments that cannot be fulfilled or that require approval from higher authorities without following the proper channels. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Actively listening to and acknowledging the student's concerns. 2. Clearly understanding and referencing relevant college policies and procedures, e.g., admissions deadlines, deferral policies, special consideration guidelines. 3. Documenting the student's situation and the steps taken to address it. 4. Consulting with supervisors or relevant departments, e.g., admissions office, student services, if the situation falls outside standard procedures or requires a policy exception. 5. Communicating any decision clearly and transparently to the student, explaining the rationale and any available recourse. Question 6. Implementation of a new campus-wide academic advising system requires communicating important updates and potential system downtime to the student body. Which approach best balances the need for effective communication with the imperative to protect student privacy? Option A. Holding informal Q and sessions in public campus spaces where students can ask questions, and advisors can share specific examples of how the system will impact individual student academic plans. Option B. Utilizing the official college-wide email system and the secure student portal to disseminate all relevant information, ensuring any specific student data is anonymized or aggregated. Option C. Posting detailed announcements about the system and its features on a public-facing college social media page, including screenshots of the system interface that might inadvertently display student names. Option D. Sending individual, unencrypted emails to students with specific instructions and links to the new system, without verifying recipient identities beyond their email address. The correct answer is B. Utilizing the official college-wide email system and the secure student portal to disseminate all relevant information, ensuring any specific student data is anonymized or aggregated. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for timely and accurate information dissemination with the ethical obligation to protect sensitive student data. The professional challenge lies in identifying the appropriate channels and methods for communication that uphold privacy regulations while still serving the academic community. Careful judgment is required to avoid any breaches of confidentiality or misinterpretations that could negatively impact students or the institution. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured and authorized communication process that prioritizes data privacy. This means utilizing official college communication channels, such as secure student portals or authenticated email systems, and ensuring that any shared information is anonymized or aggregated to prevent individual identification. This aligns with the principles of data protection and privacy, as mandated by relevant educational privacy laws and college policies, which emphasize the responsible handling of personal information. Correct approach is analysis. Sharing information through informal, unsecure channels like social media groups or personal email accounts is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses established data security protocols and exposes student information to unauthorized access, violating privacy laws and college policies designed to protect student records. Disclosing specific student details, even with the intention of providing context, constitutes a direct breach of privacy. This is unacceptable, as it violates the fundamental right to confidentiality and contravenes regulations that strictly limit the disclosure of personally identifiable information without explicit consent. Delaying communication indefinitely due to an overabundance of caution, without exploring secure and compliant methods, is also professionally problematic. While privacy is paramount, an inability to communicate essential information effectively can hinder academic progress and institutional operations, suggesting a failure to adequately balance competing professional responsibilities. Professional reasoning. Professionals in an educational setting should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core objective of the communication. Next, they must assess the nature of the information to be shared and its potential sensitivity. This should be followed by a thorough review of applicable privacy regulations and institutional policies. The final step involves selecting communication methods that are both secure and compliant, ensuring that the information is disseminated effectively without compromising privacy or ethical standards. Question 7. Quality control measures reveal a significant discrepancy between the preliminary data collected for a student research project and the figures presented in the draft report. The student supervisor is under pressure to submit the final report by the end of the week. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure academic integrity and the quality of the research? Option A. The student should be encouraged to adjust the preliminary data to match the figures in the draft report, ensuring a cohesive final submission. Option B. The student should be told to ignore the discrepancy and focus on meeting the submission deadline, as the supervisor will review it later. Option C. The student should be instructed to revise the report to align the presented figures with the preliminary data, thoroughly documenting any adjustments made and the rationale behind them. Option D. The student should be advised to proceed with the draft report as is, assuming the discrepancy is a minor error that will not significantly impact the overall conclusions. The correct answer is C. The student should be instructed to revise the report to align the presented figures with the preliminary data, thoroughly documenting any adjustments made and the rationale behind them. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for timely and accurate information with the ethical obligation to protect sensitive data and ensure compliance with academic integrity policies. The pressure to meet deadlines can tempt individuals to cut corners, but doing so can have serious repercussions for both the individual and the institution. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing demands ethically and effectively. The correct approach involves a systematic and transparent process of data validation and verification. This means cross-referencing information from multiple reliable sources, seeking clarification from original authors or data providers when discrepancies arise, and documenting all steps taken to ensure accuracy. This approach aligns with the principles of academic integrity and responsible research, which are fundamental to the Algonquin College's educational mission. It upholds the value of truthfulness and accuracy in all academic endeavors. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the report without addressing the identified inconsistencies. This failure to validate data directly violates the principle of accuracy and could lead to the dissemination of misinformation, undermining the credibility of the college and the students involved. It also demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the importance of reliable data in academic work. Another incorrect approach would be to simply ignore the discrepancies and assume they are minor. This demonstrates a lack of critical thinking and a failure to recognize that even small errors can have a significant impact on the overall conclusions of a report. It also shows a lack of respect for the rigor expected in academic research. A further incorrect approach would be to alter the data to fit the expected narrative or to conceal the inconsistencies. This is a clear breach of academic integrity and constitutes data manipulation, which is a serious ethical violation. It undermines the very foundation of honest inquiry and can have severe consequences for academic and professional careers. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a commitment to accuracy, transparency, and ethical conduct. When faced with data inconsistencies, professionals should 1. Acknowledge the discrepancies. 2. Investigate the source of the inconsistencies. 3. Seek clarification or additional information. 4. Document all actions taken. 5. Report findings accurately, including any limitations or uncertainties. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are based on sound evidence and uphold the highest ethical standards. Question 8. During the evaluation of a prospective student's application for the Algonquin College entrance exam, it is discovered that a required document was inadvertently omitted due to a technical issue with the submission portal, leading to an initial assessment of incompleteness. The student has since provided proof of the document's existence and is requesting an opportunity to resubmit. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Grant provisional admission to the student while awaiting the missing document, bypassing the standard review process. Option B. Advise the student to reapply for the next admission cycle, as the current cycle's deadline for complete applications has passed. Option C. Initiate a formal review of the student's application, considering the provided evidence of the document and the explanation for its omission, to determine eligibility for resubmission and potential admission. Option D. Immediately reject the application due to the initial incompleteness, as per standard protocol for missing documentation. Correct answer is C. Initiate a formal review of the student's application, considering the provided evidence of the document and the explanation for its omission, to determine eligibility for resubmission and potential admission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate needs of a student with the established policies and ethical considerations of an educational institution. The admissions team must make a judgment call that impacts an individual's educational trajectory while upholding the integrity of the admissions process and ensuring fairness to all applicants. Careful consideration of the student's circumstances, the college's policies, and the potential precedents set is crucial. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented review of the student's application, considering any extenuating circumstances that may have contributed to the initial deficiencies. This approach aligns with the Algonquin College entrance exam's implied commitment to fairness and providing opportunities where appropriate, while still adhering to academic standards. It demonstrates a willingness to engage with individual student situations in a structured and equitable manner, seeking to understand the root causes of any issues and exploring potential solutions that uphold the college's academic integrity. This is ethically sound as it prioritizes a holistic review and avoids arbitrary decisions. An incorrect approach would be to immediately deny the student based solely on the initial incomplete application without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge that circumstances can change or that there might be valid reasons for initial omissions, potentially leading to an unfair outcome and overlooking a promising candidate. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass established procedures and grant admission without proper documentation or a clear rationale. This undermines the integrity of the admissions process, creates a precedent for special treatment, and could lead to future inconsistencies and challenges in maintaining academic standards. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on the administrative burden of reevaluating the application, without considering the student's potential, would be ethically deficient, prioritizing process over people. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the established policies and guidelines. They should then gather all relevant information, including the student's application, any supporting documentation, and context for any deficiencies. This information should be analyzed objectively, considering both the student's situation and the institution's requirements. Finally, a decision should be made based on a fair and consistent application of policies, with clear documentation of the rationale, especially in cases that deviate from standard procedures. Question 9. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a data breach occurring during the collection of applicant essay submissions for the Algonquin College entrance exam, with a high potential impact on applicant privacy. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation? Option A. Inform applicants of the moderate risk of a data breach and proceed with essay collection, relying on their consent to proceed. Option B. Proceed with essay collection as planned, assuming the risk matrix is overly cautious and that existing security measures are sufficient. Option C. Conduct a detailed privacy impact assessment (PIA) to identify specific vulnerabilities, evaluate the severity of potential impacts, and develop targeted mitigation strategies before proceeding with essay collection. Option D. Immediately halt the essay submission process and explore alternative, less data-intensive assessment methods to mitigate the identified risk. The correct answer is D. Immediately halt the essay submission process and explore alternative, less data-intensive assessment methods to mitigate the identified risk. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data. The Algonquin College entrance exam, like many educational institutions, operates under strict privacy policies and data protection guidelines, which are paramount to maintaining trust with applicants and adhering to legal frameworks governing personal information. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any information gathering process is both effective and compliant. The correct approach involves a structured and transparent process for assessing the impact of data collection on applicant privacy. This includes identifying potential risks, evaluating their likelihood and severity, and developing mitigation strategies. This aligns with the principles of privacy by design and by default, which are increasingly embedded in regulatory frameworks and ethical best practices for handling personal data. Specifically, it emphasizes proactive identification and management of privacy risks before they materialize, ensuring that data processing activities are conducted in a manner that respects individual rights and complies with relevant data protection legislation. An incorrect approach that bypasses established privacy impact assessment protocols and proceeds with data collection without thorough vetting poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. This could lead to breaches of privacy legislation, resulting in penalties, reputational damage, and a loss of trust. It demonstrates a disregard for the fundamental right to privacy and fails to uphold the ethical responsibility to safeguard sensitive applicant information. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on the perceived low risk without a formal assessment is also problematic. While a risk might appear low, without a systematic evaluation, unforeseen consequences or misinterpretations of risk can lead to unintended privacy harms. This approach lacks the due diligence required to ensure compliance and ethical conduct. Finally, an approach that prioritizes expediency over thoroughness by collecting data without a clear understanding of its necessity or the potential privacy implications, is ethically unsound and potentially violates data minimization principles. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the purpose of data collection, identifying all applicable regulations and institutional policies, conducting a comprehensive privacy impact assessment, and implementing appropriate safeguards. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and legally compliant. Question 10. Performance analysis shows a significant increase in inquiries from external organizations seeking aggregated student performance data for research purposes, with one organization specifically requesting details on applicant demographics and program acceptance rates for the upcoming academic year. Option A. Verify the requesting organization's legitimacy and the specific purpose of their research. Consult Algonquin College's data privacy policy and relevant provincial privacy legislation, and if authorized, provide anonymized, aggregated data that does not identify individual students. Option B. Offer a general overview of student performance trends at Algonquin College without confirming the requester's identity or the specific data requested. Option C. Provide the requested demographic and acceptance rate data directly to the organization to facilitate their research, assuming their stated purpose is valid. Option D. Inform the organization that such data cannot be shared due to privacy concerns, without first investigating the legitimacy of their request or the possibility of providing anonymized data. The correct answer is A. Verify the requesting organization's legitimacy and the specific purpose of their research. Consult Algonquin College's data privacy policy and relevant provincial privacy legislation, and if authorized, provide anonymized, aggregated data that does not identify individual students. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect student privacy and ensure data integrity. The pressure to provide a quick response to a potential stakeholder can lead to hasty decisions that violate established protocols. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing demands responsibly. The correct approach involves a structured process of verifying the requester's identity and authority, understanding the specific information needed, and then consulting relevant Algonquin College policies and privacy regulations before releasing any data. This upholds the principle of data protection and ensures that information is shared only with authorized individuals for legitimate purposes, aligning with the Algonquin College entrance exam's commitment to responsible data handling and student confidentiality. Releasing information without proper verification or authorization is a significant regulatory and ethical failure, breaches student privacy, potentially violates data protection laws, and undermines the trust placed in the institution. Providing a general overview without confirming the requester's legitimacy or the specific purpose of the inquiry also fails to meet the standards of responsible information dissemination. Similarly, attempting to guess or infer the required information rather than seeking clarification demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for accuracy, which can lead to misinformation and further complications. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to institutional policies and relevant privacy legislation. This involves 1. Understanding the request and the requester. 2. Assessing the legitimacy and purpose of the request. 3. Consulting applicable policies and regulations. 4. Seeking appropriate authorization if necessary. And 5. Documenting the process and the information released. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and compliant. Question 11. The evaluation methodology shows a tendency to rely heavily on historical performance data and standardized test scores to predict future academic success. Option A. A methodology that incorporates a portfolio review, a structured interview assessing problem-solving skills, and a writing sample to gauge critical thinking. Option B. A methodology that exclusively uses the applicant's grade 12 final marks and a single standardized aptitude test score. Option C. A methodology that prioritizes a single, high-stakes examination designed to cover a broad range of academic subjects. Option D. A methodology that relies primarily on a series of informal, unstructured interviews with admissions staff. The correct answer is A. A methodology that incorporates a portfolio review, a structured interview assessing problem-solving skills, and a writing sample to gauge critical thinking. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to critically assess the effectiveness of different evaluation methodologies in the context of Algonquin College's entrance exam requirements. The challenge lies in understanding how each methodology aligns with the stated goals of the exam, which are implicitly to assess readiness for college-level study, and to do so without resorting to purely quantitative measures. Careful judgment is required to discern which approach offers the most comprehensive and relevant insights into an applicant's potential for success. The correct approach involves selecting the methodology that emphasizes a holistic review of an applicant's skills and potential, moving beyond simple data points to understand qualitative aspects of their readiness. This aligns with the implicit regulatory framework of a college entrance exam, which aims to identify candidates who possess not only academic aptitude, but also critical thinking, problem-solving abilities, and a capacity for learning, all of which are best assessed through methods that allow for nuanced interpretation. Such an approach is ethically sound as it seeks to provide a fair and comprehensive evaluation, minimizing bias that might arise from purely quantitative assessments. An approach that focuses solely on standardized test scores, while potentially efficient, fails to capture the full spectrum of an applicant's capabilities. This is a regulatory failure, because it may inadvertently exclude promising candidates who excel in areas not measured by standardized tests, thereby not fulfilling the exam's broader purpose of identifying suitable students. An approach that prioritizes a single, high-stakes assessment without considering supporting evidence risks oversimplifying the evaluation process and may not accurately reflect an applicant's overall preparedness. This is an ethical failure, as it can lead to an unfair assessment of an individual's potential. An approach that relies heavily on subjective interviews without structured criteria can introduce significant bias, making it difficult to ensure consistent and fair evaluations across all applicants. This is both a regulatory and ethical failure, as it undermines the principle of equitable assessment. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins by clearly defining the objectives of the evaluation. They should then identify potential methodologies and critically assess each against these objectives, considering both their strengths and weaknesses in capturing the desired attributes. This involves seeking methods that offer a balance between quantitative and qualitative data, ensuring that the evaluation is comprehensive, fair, and aligned with the overarching goals of the institution. Question 12. The evaluation methodology shows that a proposed entrance exam for Algonquin College is being assessed for its overall impact. Which of the following approaches to impact assessment would best ensure the exam is a fair and effective predictor of student success while aligning with the college's mission? Option A. A methodology that comprehensively analyzes the exam's predictive validity, fairness across diverse applicant groups, administrative feasibility, and alignment with Algonquin College's stated mission and program outcomes. Option B. A methodology that exclusively measures the perceived difficulty of the exam question based on feedback from a small, unrepresentative sample of current students. Option C. A methodology that primarily focuses on the speed and efficiency with which applicant responses can be scored and processed by the admissions department. Option D. A methodology that relies solely on historical data of applicant pass rates from the past decade, without considering any changes in curriculum or admission standards. The correct answer is A. A methodology that comprehensively analyzes the exam's predictive validity, fairness across diverse applicant groups, administrative feasibility, and alignment with Algonquin College's stated mission and program outcomes. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to critically assess the strengths and weaknesses of different impact assessment methodologies in the context of a university entrance exam. The challenge lies in understanding that while all methodologies aim to evaluate impact, their effectiveness and suitability can vary significantly depending on the specific goals and constraints of the assessment. Careful judgment is required to identify the approach that best aligns with the principles of a fair and effective entrance examination. The correct approach involves recognizing that a comprehensive impact assessment for a university entrance exam should consider multiple facets of the applicant experience and the institution's objectives. This includes evaluating the assessment's predictive validity, how well it predicts future academic success, its fairness and equity across diverse applicant groups, its administrative feasibility, and its alignment with the college's mission and program requirements. A methodology that prioritizes a holistic view, incorporating both quantitative and qualitative data, and considering the long-term implications for both students and the institution, is most appropriate. This aligns with the ethical principle of ensuring a fair and equitable selection process, as well as the practical need for an assessment that serves the institution's strategic goals. An approach that focuses solely on the immediate administrative ease of scoring would be incorrect. This fails to consider the fundamental purpose of an entrance exam, which is to identify suitable candidates for higher education. Such a narrow focus could lead to the selection of students who may not be academically prepared, thus undermining the quality of education and potentially leading to higher attrition rates. This represents an ethical failure in ensuring fairness and an academic failure in achieving the assessment's core objective. An approach that prioritizes only the perceived difficulty of the questions, without considering their relevance to academic success or potential biases, would also be incorrect. Difficulty alone does not guarantee that an assessment is effective or fair. This approach risks penalizing applicants who may possess the necessary skills, but are not accustomed to the specific types of challenges presented, leading to inequitable outcomes. This is an ethical failure in promoting equity and a practical failure in accurately measuring aptitude. An approach that exclusively examines the historical pass rates of previous applicants, without considering the evolving needs of the college or the changing landscape of secondary education, would be incorrect. While historical data can be informative, it does not account for future trends or the need to adapt assessment criteria to ensure a diverse and capable incoming class. This approach lacks foresight and can lead to a stagnant and potentially unrepresentative student body, failing to meet the dynamic needs of the institution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a systematic evaluation of assessment methodologies against established criteria for validity, reliability, fairness, and alignment with institutional goals. Professionals should consider the purpose of the assessment, the target audience, the resources available, and the potential consequences of different approaches. A balanced perspective that integrates various forms of evidence and considers ethical implications is crucial for developing and implementing effective and equitable assessment strategies. Question 13. The evaluation methodology shows a tendency to prioritize historical data and ease of implementation over a nuanced understanding of how the assessment truly reflects the diverse skills required for success in the chosen program. Which approach to impact assessment would best address this potential deficiency? Option A. Relying on established benchmarks from similar programs at other institutions to ensure the assessment's rigor and comparability. Option B. Increasing the number of questions that test rote memorization, as this is a common and easily quantifiable skill. Option C. Focusing on streamlining the administrative process to reduce costs and applicant wait times, as this directly impacts the applicant experience. Option D. Conducting a forward-looking analysis that maps assessment components directly to program learning outcomes and considers the potential for diverse applicant backgrounds to demonstrate competency through various means. Correct answer is D. Conducting a forward-looking analysis that maps assessment components directly to program learning outcomes and considers the potential for diverse applicant backgrounds to demonstrate competency through various means. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to critically assess the effectiveness of different evaluation methodologies in the context of an entrance exam. The challenge lies in identifying the approach that best aligns with the principles of fair and comprehensive assessment, as implicitly guided by the general standards expected of educational institutions like Algonquin College. While specific Algonquin College entrance exam regulations are not provided, the core principle of a robust evaluation methodology is to ensure it accurately measures the skills and knowledge deemed necessary for success in the program, while also being equitable and transparent. The correct approach involves recognizing that a comprehensive impact assessment, which considers the intended outcomes and potential unintended consequences of an evaluation methodology, is crucial. This approach is right because it moves beyond simply measuring performance to understanding the broader implications of the assessment. It aligns with the ethical responsibility of an educational institution to design assessments that are not only valid and reliable, but also fair and contribute positively to the applicant's educational journey. The implicit regulatory expectation for any entrance exam is that it serves its stated purpose effectively and without undue bias. An approach that focuses solely on the ease of administration, while seemingly practical, fails ethically and regulatorily by potentially sacrificing assessment quality and fairness for convenience. A methodology that prioritizes historical data without considering current program needs or applicant demographics risks perpetuating past biases or failing to identify promising candidates with diverse backgrounds. Similarly, an approach that emphasizes the perceived difficulty of the exam without a clear link to program requirements or learning outcomes is arbitrary and does not serve the purpose of effective selection. These incorrect approaches fail because they do not demonstrate a commitment to a rigorous, fair, and outcome-oriented evaluation process, which is a fundamental expectation for any reputable educational institution. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the stated objectives of the evaluation. Then, they should consider various methodologies, weighing their strengths and weaknesses against these objectives, as well as against principles of fairness, validity, and reliability. The chosen methodology should be justifiable in terms of its ability to accurately predict success and its equitable treatment of all applicants. Question 14. The evaluation methodology shows a strong emphasis on a single, high-stakes standardized test score as the primary determinant of admission, with minimal consideration for other demonstrated skills or experiences. Which of the following approaches to evaluation methodology would best align with the principles of comprehensive and equitable assessment for a university entrance exam? Option A. A methodology that integrates a variety of assessment methods, including problem-solving exercises, critical thinking tasks, and a structured interview component to gauge diverse applicant capabilities. Option B. A methodology that exclusively relies on the applicant's grade 12 academic transcripts, assuming past performance is the sole predictor of future success. Option C. A methodology that prioritizes the applicant's extracurricular involvement and leadership roles, with academic performance serving as a secondary consideration. Option D. A methodology that uses a lottery system to select applicants from a pool that meets minimum academic requirements, ensuring randomness. Correct answer is A. A methodology that integrates a variety of assessment methods, including problem-solving exercises, critical thinking tasks, and a structured interview component to gauge diverse applicant capabilities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to critically assess the effectiveness of different evaluation methodologies in the context of a university entrance exam. The challenge lies in understanding how each methodology aligns with the stated goals of the exam and the principles of fair and comprehensive assessment, without resorting to purely quantitative analysis. Careful judgment is required to discern which approach best reflects a holistic understanding of an applicant's potential beyond mere academic scores. The correct approach involves recognizing that a robust evaluation methodology for a university entrance exam should prioritize a balanced assessment of various skills and attributes. This approach is right because it acknowledges that academic performance is only one facet of a student's potential. A methodology that incorporates diverse assessment methods, such as problem-solving, critical thinking, and communication skills, aligns with the ethical principle of providing a fair opportunity for all applicants to demonstrate their capabilities. It also reflects best practice in educational assessment, which advocates for multifaceted evaluation to predict future success in a demanding academic environment. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on standardized test scores fails to capture the full spectrum of an applicant's abilities. This is ethically problematic as it may disadvantage students who excel in areas not directly measured by standardized tests, potentially leading to an inequitable selection process. Another incorrect approach that emphasizes subjective interviews without structured criteria risks introducing bias and inconsistency into the evaluation, violating principles of fairness and transparency. Finally, an approach that solely relies on past academic achievement without considering current aptitude or potential for growth overlooks the dynamic nature of learning and development and may not accurately predict future academic success. Professionals should approach such situations by first clearly defining the objectives of the evaluation. They should then consider various assessment tools and methodologies, evaluating each against these objectives, and relevant ethical guidelines for fair and equitable assessment. A decision-making framework would involve identifying potential biases, ensuring comprehensiveness, and prioritizing methods that offer a balanced and predictive view of an applicant's suitability for the program. Question 15. The evaluation methodology shows a strong emphasis on a single, high-stakes standardized test score as the primary determinant of admission to Algonquin College. Option A. This approach is the most effective because it provides a clear, objective, and easily comparable measure of academic aptitude across all applicants, ensuring a merit-based selection process. Option B. This approach is the most effective because it relies heavily on subjective assessments and personal interviews to gauge a candidate's personality, motivation, and fit with the college culture, believing these qualitative factors are paramount. Option C. This approach is the most effective because it allows for a comprehensive assessment of a candidate's potential by incorporating a variety of assessment tools, including standardized tests, interviews, and portfolio reviews, to gain a holistic understanding of their abilities. Option D. This approach is the most effective because it prioritizes a candidate's demonstrated success in previous academic settings, assuming that past performance is the strongest predictor of future success in college. Correct answer is A. This approach is the most effective because it provides a clear, objective, and easily comparable measure of academic aptitude across all applicants, ensuring a merit-based selection process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to critically assess the strengths and weaknesses of different evaluation methodologies in the context of a university entrance exam. The Algonquin College entrance exam, like many academic admissions processes, aims to identify candidates with the potential for success. The challenge lies in discerning which methodology best aligns with the stated goals of the exam and the ethical considerations of fair and equitable assessment, without resorting to purely quantitative measures. The correct approach involves recognizing that a robust evaluation methodology for a university entrance exam should prioritize a comprehensive understanding of a candidate's abilities and potential, rather than solely focusing on a single, potentially narrow, aspect of their skills. This approach is justified by the ethical imperative to ensure fairness and validity in admissions. A methodology that incorporates diverse assessment tools and considers qualitative factors alongside quantitative ones is more likely to provide a holistic picture of an applicant, minimizing the risk of overlooking promising candidates who may not excel in a single, specific type of test. This aligns with the general principles of good educational assessment, which emphasize measuring a broad range of competencies relevant to academic success. An approach that relies solely on a single, high-stakes standardized test score is ethically problematic because it can disproportionately disadvantage students from diverse educational backgrounds or those who experience test anxiety. This method fails to capture other crucial attributes like critical thinking, problem-solving skills in varied contexts, or potential for growth, which are vital for university-level study. An approach that emphasizes only subjective interviews without any standardized component risks introducing bias and inconsistency into the evaluation process. While interviews can offer valuable qualitative insights, their effectiveness is heavily dependent on the interviewer's training and the standardization of the interview protocol. Without a standardized element, it becomes difficult to ensure a level playing field for all applicants. An approach that prioritizes a candidate's past academic performance exclusively, without considering their performance on the entrance exam itself, may not accurately reflect their current readiness for the specific demands of the college program. While past performance is an indicator, an entrance exam is designed to assess a specific set of skills and knowledge deemed relevant for immediate success at the college level. The professional decision-making process for evaluating assessment methodologies should involve considering the stated objectives of the assessment, the principles of fairness and validity, and the potential impact on diverse applicant pools. Professionals should ask, does this methodology accurately measure what it intends to measure? Is it fair to all applicants? Does it provide a holistic view of a candidate's potential? Question 16. Investigation of a prospective student's request to waive the Algonquin College entrance exam due to severe test anxiety experienced during the scheduled examination, coupled with an urgent need to meet program application deadlines, requires a careful assessment of available options. Option A. Initiate a formal review process to determine if the student qualifies for academic accommodations or an alternative assessment method, strictly adhering to Algonquin College's documented policies for special considerations in admissions. Option B. Grant an immediate waiver of the entrance exam requirement and allow the student to proceed with their application, prioritizing their urgent deadline over established examination protocols. Option C. Permit the student to retake the entrance exam immediately without any further investigation into the circumstances of their initial performance or consideration of college policies. Option D. Advise the student that test anxiety is not a valid reason to deviate from standard admissions procedures, and deny any possibility of alternative arrangements. The correct answer is A. Initiate a formal review process to determine if the student qualifies for academic accommodations or an alternative assessment method, strictly adhering to Algonquin College's documented policies for special considerations in admissions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate needs of a student with the established academic integrity policies of Algonquin College. The admissions team must exercise careful judgment to ensure fairness to all applicants while upholding the integrity of the entrance examination process. The core of the challenge lies in determining whether to grant an exception based on extenuating circumstances without setting a precedent that could undermine the validity of the exam for future applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review of the student's situation against established college policies for accommodations and appeals. This approach is professionally sound because it adheres to the principles of fairness, consistency, and due process. Algonquin College, like most educational institutions, will have specific guidelines for handling requests for special consideration due to medical or personal emergencies. Following these established procedures ensures that decisions are not arbitrary and are based on objective criteria, thereby protecting the integrity of the admissions process and demonstrating respect for all applicants. This aligns with the ethical obligation to treat all individuals equitably and to maintain the credibility of the institution's assessment methods. An incorrect approach would be to grant a waiver of the entrance exam requirement solely based on the student's expressed anxiety and the urgency of their application deadline, without any formal documentation or adherence to college policy. This fails to uphold the principle of equal treatment, as it bypasses the established procedures that other students would have to follow. It also risks undermining the academic standards the entrance exam is designed to assess. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's request outright without any consideration or exploration of potential accommodations or alternative assessment methods, even if they fall within policy. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and a failure to explore all reasonable avenues to support a student facing genuine difficulties, potentially violating principles of student support and accessibility. A third incorrect approach would be to allow the student to retake the exam immediately without any review of the original circumstances or consideration of whether the anxiety was a temporary issue or a recurring one that might require ongoing support. This could lead to a situation where the exam's purpose as a standardized measure is compromised, and it doesn't address the underlying cause of the student's difficulty. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding and applying relevant college policies and procedures for admissions, accommodations, and appeals. 2. Gathering all necessary information and documentation from the applicant. 3. Consulting with relevant departments, e.g., admissions, student services, academic advising if necessary. 4. Making a decision based on established criteria and documenting the rationale thoroughly. 5. Communicating the decision clearly and respectfully to the applicant, outlining any next steps or alternative options. Question 17. The evaluation methodology shows a proposed approach to assessing the effectiveness of the Algonquin College entrance exam. Which of the following approaches to evaluating this methodology would be most professionally sound and aligned with principles of fair and effective assessment? Option A. An assessment based on informal feedback from admissions staff regarding their personal opinions on the exam's content. Option B. An assessment that primarily focuses on the perceived difficulty of the exam questions, as reported by a small group of current students. Option C. A comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes how the proposed methodology might affect different applicant groups and evaluates its alignment with the college's academic program requirements. Option D. An evaluation that prioritizes the speed at which the exam can be administered and scored, assuming that efficiency guarantees effectiveness. The correct answer is C. A comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes how the proposed methodology might affect different applicant groups and evaluates its alignment with the college's academic program requirements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to critically assess the effectiveness of a proposed evaluation methodology for a university entrance exam. The challenge lies in identifying the approach that best aligns with the principles of fairness, validity, and reliability, which are foundational to any standardized assessment. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between methods that genuinely measure aptitude and those that might introduce bias or fail to capture essential skills. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that considers potential differential effects on various applicant groups. This is crucial for ensuring equity and compliance with principles of fair assessment, which are implicitly expected in educational institutions like Algonquin College. A robust impact assessment would analyze how the methodology might disproportionately benefit or disadvantage certain demographic groups, ensuring that the exam serves its purpose of identifying capable students without creating undue barriers. This aligns with the ethical obligation to provide equal opportunity and to develop assessments that are predictive of academic success for all qualified candidates. An approach that focuses solely on the perceived difficulty of the questions without considering their relevance to academic success is flawed. This overlooks the core purpose of an entrance exam, which is to predict future performance, not just to test general knowledge or perceived difficulty. Such a narrow focus could lead to an assessment that is not a valid predictor of a student's ability to succeed in college-level studies. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of administration over the thoroughness of the evaluation. While efficiency is desirable, it should not come at the expense of ensuring the assessment is fair, valid, and reliable. Rushing the impact assessment could lead to overlooking critical issues that could compromise the integrity of the admissions process. Finally, an approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal opinions rather than systematic data analysis is professionally unacceptable. Entrance exams are high-stakes assessments, and their methodologies must be grounded in empirical evidence and rigorous analysis to ensure fairness and validity. Relying on informal feedback without proper investigation can lead to biased conclusions and unfair outcomes for applicants. Professionals tasked with developing or evaluating such methodologies should employ a systematic decision-making process. This involves clearly defining the objectives of the assessment, identifying potential sources of bias, selecting appropriate analytical tools to measure impact, and ensuring that the chosen methodology is both valid and reliable. Transparency and a commitment to fairness should guide every step of the process. Question 18. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential conflict of interest when an admissions officer is reviewing an application from a close relative. Which of the following actions best adheres to the principles of academic integrity and ethical conduct expected at Algonquin College? Option A. Proceed with the evaluation as usual, assuming personal objectivity can be maintained despite the familial connection. Option B. Delegate the review to a junior staff member without informing them of the familial relationship. Option C. Disclose the relationship to the admissions committee and recuse oneself from the evaluation and decision-making process for that applicant. Option D. Advocate for the applicant's admission to colleagues on the admissions committee, highlighting their strengths without mentioning the personal relationship. The correct answer is C. Disclose the relationship to the admissions committee and recuse oneself from the evaluation and decision-making process for that applicant. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure the integrity of academic processes. The core issue is maintaining objectivity and fairness when personal relationships might influence decision-making, which is a fundamental ethical consideration in educational institutions. Careful judgment is required to uphold the college's standards and the trust placed in its admissions process. The correct approach involves a transparent disclosure of the relationship and recusal from the decision-making process. This upholds the principle of impartiality, a cornerstone of fair admissions. By stepping aside, the individual avoids any appearance of impropriety and ensures that the applicant is evaluated solely on their merits, in accordance with Algonquin College's stated admission policies and general ethical guidelines for educational institutions, which prioritize fairness and equal opportunity. An incorrect approach that involves advocating for the applicant without disclosure fails to address the conflict of interest. This action violates ethical obligations to be impartial and could lead to an unfair advantage for the applicant, undermining the integrity of the admissions process and potentially violating college policies on conflicts of interest. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the relationship and proceed with the evaluation as if it doesn't exist, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of ethical awareness and a failure to recognize the potential for bias. It can lead to perceptions of favoritism and damage the reputation of both the individual and the institution. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the college's policies on conflicts of interest and ethical conduct. When a potential conflict arises, the immediate step is to identify it, assess its impact on objectivity, and then take appropriate action, which typically includes disclosure and recusal. This structured approach ensures that decisions are made ethically and in compliance with institutional guidelines, safeguarding the fairness and credibility of the process. Question 19. When evaluating an applicant's request for a modified entrance exam format due to a documented learning disability, and the applicant has provided a recent medical note, what is the most appropriate initial step for the Algonquin College admissions officer to take? Option A. Inform the applicant that all entrance exams must be taken in the standard format as per college policy. Option B. Consult the Algonquin College Admissions Committee or the designated policy expert for guidance on the appropriate procedure for handling such accommodation requests. Option C. Immediately approve the requested modification based on the medical note to ensure the applicant is not disadvantaged. Option D. Ask the applicant to retake the exam at a later date when they feel more prepared without any modifications. The correct answer is C. Immediately approve the requested modification based on the medical note to ensure the applicant is not disadvantaged. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate needs of a student with the established policies and ethical considerations of an educational institution. The admissions officer must exercise careful judgment to ensure fairness, accuracy, and adherence to Algonquin College's entrance exam guidelines. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting the spirit of the exam's purpose, which is to assess a student's readiness for college-level studies, while also respecting the integrity of the assessment process. The correct approach involves seeking clarification from the appropriate authority within Algonquin College regarding the specific circumstances and the exam's intent. This demonstrates a commitment to upholding the integrity of the admissions process and ensuring that decisions are made in accordance with established protocols. By consulting with the admissions committee or a designated policy expert, the admissions officer ensures that any decision made is informed, consistent with college policy, and ethically sound. This proactive step prevents potential misinterpretations or unfair advantages, aligning with the principle of equitable assessment for all applicants. An incorrect approach would be to unilaterally grant an accommodation without proper authorization. This bypasses established procedures and could lead to inconsistencies in how accommodations are applied, potentially undermining the fairness of the entrance exam for other applicants. It also risks violating Algonquin College's specific entrance exam guidelines, which likely outline a formal process for requesting and approving accommodations. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's request outright without any attempt to understand the situation or explore possible solutions within the college's framework. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and a failure to uphold the institution's commitment to supporting diverse student needs, potentially leading to an unfair exclusion of a qualified candidate. It also neglects the professional responsibility to explore all avenues within the established regulatory framework before making a final decision. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, thoroughly understand the student's request and the underlying reasons. Second, consult the relevant policies and guidelines of the institution, in this case, Algonquin College's entrance exam regulations. Third, if ambiguity exists or the situation is novel, seek guidance from the appropriate internal authority, e.g., admissions committee, registrar's office, or a designated policy advisor. Fourth, make a decision that is consistent with policy, fair to all applicants, and ethically defensible. Finally, document the decision and the rationale. Question 20. The evaluation methodology shows a tendency to favor applicants from specific secondary school curricula, potentially overlooking equally qualified candidates from alternative educational backgrounds. Which approach to assessing this methodology's impact is most aligned with ensuring a fair and equitable admissions process for Algonquin College? Option A. Rely on feedback from current faculty members regarding their perception of the preparedness of students admitted through the current methodology. Option B. Focus on streamlining the administration of the evaluation to reduce processing time for all applicants. Option C. Conduct a comparative analysis of applicant performance data from different secondary school curricula to identify any statistically significant disparities in outcomes attributable to the evaluation methodology. Option D. Prioritize the methodology that has historically yielded the highest number of successful applicants, assuming it is the most effective. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comparative analysis of applicant performance data from different secondary school curricula to identify any statistically significant disparities in outcomes attributable to the evaluation methodology. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to critically assess the effectiveness of different evaluation methodologies in the context of a university entrance exam. The challenge lies in discerning which approach aligns best with the principles of fairness, validity, and reliability, as implicitly expected by an academic institution like Algonquin College. Careful judgment is required to avoid methodologies that might introduce bias, fail to accurately measure essential skills, or be overly burdensome without commensurate benefit. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that considers the potential consequences of the chosen evaluation methodology on diverse applicant groups and the overall integrity of the admissions process. This approach is right because it aligns with the implicit ethical obligation of educational institutions to ensure equitable access and fair assessment. While specific Algonquin College entrance exam regulations are not provided, the general principles of educational assessment demand that methodologies be scrutinized for their potential to discriminate, their ability to predict academic success, and their transparency. A robust impact assessment ensures that the chosen method is not only a good predictor of future performance, but also does not unfairly disadvantage any group of applicants, thereby upholding principles of fairness and meritocracy. An approach that focuses solely on the ease of administration is incorrect because it prioritizes operational efficiency over fairness and validity. This failure neglects the ethical imperative to select a method that accurately measures the skills and knowledge relevant to academic success and avoids introducing undue barriers for certain applicants. An approach that prioritizes the historical success rate of a particular methodology without considering its current relevance or potential biases is also incorrect. Educational needs and applicant demographics evolve, and a methodology that was once effective may no longer be so, or it may have developed inherent biases over time. Ethical assessment requires continuous reevaluation. Finally, an approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a small group of admissions staff without systematic data collection or analysis is professionally unacceptable. This lacks the rigor necessary for a fair and defensible admissions process. It fails to provide objective evidence of the methodology's effectiveness and can lead to subjective and potentially discriminatory decisions, violating principles of transparency and fairness. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the objectives of the evaluation. This is followed by identifying potential methodologies and then conducting a thorough impact assessment for each, considering validity, reliability, fairness, and administrative feasibility. The chosen methodology should be the one that best meets all these criteria, with a strong emphasis on fairness and predictive validity.